True peace, true peace. Happy holy day, peacemakers. We are live in 5. Hope everyone's enjoying their holy day. True peace. First thing first, I want to give honors to the divine creators upon with the Allah. I want to give honors to the prophet, Noble Ali. I want to give honors to everyone that came before the prophet, such as the forerunner, Honorable Marcus Garvey, as well as Deuce Ali. I want to give honors to all those that came after the prophet, such as the Master Teacher, Dr. Malachi L, C.F. Bey, H.I.M Bey, many others. The Messenger, Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I want to give honors to you all who will be here in participation with me tonight as we navigate through our temple service. I want to give honors to all things Moorish and indigenous, all things indigenous. And with that, we're going to open up tonight Khutbah sermon with our divine supplication. We're going to get things started. So, welcome to branch temple number 24 of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We are a global branch temple of the Moorish Science Temple of America, where we teach our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may learn to love instead of hate. Come link yourself with the family of nations by joining us here every Friday on Telegram. All right, so we're going to jump right into our divine supplication. As y'all know, we begin our prayers and thinking by using the source, by using the all. O Heavenly One, the Most High, who is sustainer of all the worlds, we do accept the duty you have laid on us to clean up the filth made by the West and its non-Semitic fools. O my sustainer, we beseech you to keep your hand over us, to control the streams of the courses of our lives. Our sustainer, and if we do wrong, please show our divine blessings and forgiveness on us. You are the only one that can raise us true followers of the news bearers, and in thy name, we carry on. All right. So we're going to open up with our family guide and our 19 affirmations, which are some very powerful affirmations that you should be going over with you and your family, your group of peers that you consider family or close friends. And these affirmations are called what we accept as fact, the daily affirmation of loyalty of the children of the Elohim. And as they state, we accept as fact the eternal laws of nature as revealed through science, past events, logic, and common sense, revealed as right knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. We accept as fact the highest laws of nature is the cooperation and harmony of all living things. We accept as fact our way of life as a means to the best end. We accept as fact that loyalty is the greatest of all honors and treason is the worst of all crimes. We accept as fact that what is good for the Holy Tabernacle is the highest virtue, and what is bad for the Holy Tabernacle is the ultimate evil. We accept as fact that the Holy Tabernacle is the finest and noblest organization for all humanity, created by circumstances, and the ancient and mystic order of Melchizedek is the noblest of fraternities on and above this planet. We accept as fact that creativity, love, and cooperation are the essence of success. We accept as fact that truth and facts are always and has always been the originator and creator of all success. We accept this fact that all worthwhile cultures and civilizations came about from the ancient Sumerians and Kamite Egyptians and the Anunnaki, or Elohims from the heavens, without which there would be none. We accept this fact that for the Holy Tabernacle to survive, expand, and advance, we need first of all a revolution of values and thoughts, which must start within each person by being truthful with themselves and about themselves. Therefore, we completely and categorically reject all myths, fictions, religions, and lies that have not been proven. That would include your heavens, your hells, your hellfire and brimstones, your horn and pitchfork devils, your winged angels, and your old man God character sitting on the throne up there somewhere. We deal strictly with facts. If you can't prove it, we don't want to hear it. That doesn't mean we won't listen to you. Just don't expect us to accept your beliefs by virtue of a title such as pastor, such as reverend, pastor, deacon, imam, sheik, rabbi, minister, theologian, etc. That is your sensationalism, and we deal with just the facts. We accept this fact that the only true revolution is a war of good against evil, right against wrong, fairness against unfairness, loyalty against disloyalty, sincerity against insincerity, honesty against dishonesty. And this wars fall within each person among the agreeable and disagreeable Elohims that make up your willpower. We accept this fact that the unity of our community and its success will only happen with cooperation with all involved. We accept this fact, the total unification of all humanity on the basis of truth. That is, accepting people and races for who and what they are, respecting their culture, their languages, and their beliefs, and expect the same. We accept this fact that the human race's biological and cultural heritage is now under attack by our own morals, our self-righteousness, our desire to control industry, and these things attack the very existence of humanity. We accept this fact that males as well as females are equal in all things and should be dealt with as partners in all matters. We accept this fact that no one race of people is better than the other. In fact, no one wins the race in racism. We accept this fact that communication between different people is the cure to the ignorance that breeds the disease hate. We accept this fact that a good and well-rounded education could prevent most of the ignorance that plagues the world. We accept this fact that the all is just that, the all. You can't take from the all, you can't add to the all. We are all within the all as one. That is our concept of what you call a deity. To the fulfillment of these facts, we children of the Elohim forever pledge our lives, our sacred honor, and our spiritual zeal. All right. So we're going to open up with our Moorish Constitution and Moorish prayer. So y'all know how it go. All rise facing the east, feet at a 45-degree angle. 2 fingers up, 5 fingers up. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. All right, so we're going to get into this divine constitution and bylaws here next. And as it states, Act 1, the Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body of the Moorish Temple of America. The Assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And it is known before the members of the Moorish Temple of America. Act 2, all meetings are to be open and closed promptly according to the Circle 7 and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest because on a Friday the first man was formed in flesh, and on a Friday the first man departed out of flesh and ascended unto his Father God of love. For that cause, Friday is the holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Act 3, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all members of the Moorish Temple of America. No member is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister, because Allah is love. Act 4, all members must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all members must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are a part and parcel of the government and must live the life accordingly. Act 5, this organization of the Moorish Temple of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Act 6, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we're teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7. All members must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and parcel of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become part of the uplifting of humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his Father God of love. All right, y'all. So we're gonna jump into our weekly readings. Every week we kick off our weekly readings with chapter 25 of the Holy Quran, Surah 7. Which I state here every week. Chapter 25 is the precursor for all actions, intents, and behaviors of Moorish peoples. This is a guideline. This is the goalpost. This is the goalpost that we should be using as Moorish people. And as you will see, as we finish and continue with our weekly reading, you'll see this is something that could be used as a standard for all Moorish people throughout the entire world. So this is not just for temple members in the Moorish Science Temple of America, but all Moorish people all over the world. So with that, we're going to jump right into chapter 25, called the Holy Covenant of the Asiatic Nation. And as it reads, ye are the children of one father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother had given you suck. At the bonds of affection, therefore unite thee with thy brothers, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thy own blood. If thy brothers in adversity, assist him. If thy sisters in trouble, forsake her not. So shall the fortunes of thy father contribute to the support of his whole race, and his care be continued to you all in your love to each other. So, as I stated, this can be used as a standard of how we treat each other globally throughout the whole entire world. For all Moorish people that are misnomered as black people, and that includes black people all over the world. All right, so we're gonna jump to chapter 47 and 48. Chapter 47 is called Egypt, the capital empire of the dominion of Africa, and as it reads, the inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Omniverse, the first true and divine name of Africa, the dividing of the land between the father and the son. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa, they were the founders and all the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren, who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa, across Great Atlantis, even unto the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands, before the great earthquake which caused the Great Atlantic Ocean. The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade, and it extends eastward from the river Nile westward across the Great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the Holy Land of Canaan. What your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. There's no one who is able to change man from the descendant nature of his forefathers, unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator Allah himself. These holy and divine laws are from the prophet, Noble Joe Ali, the founder of the Uniting of the Moorish Science Temple of America. These laws are to be strictly preserved by the members of all the temples of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that they will learn to open their meeting and guide it according to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Every subordinate temple of the Grand Major Temples to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. and to create their own laws and customs in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet and the Grand Temple. I, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, was sent by the great God Allah to warn all Asiatics of America to repent from their sinful ways before that great and awful day that is sure to come. The time has come when every nation must worship under its own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess his own. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. That is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black and colored, was given to the Asiatics of America who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father, and straight after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing. All right, y'all. So we're going to get right into it. Chapter 48, called The End of Times and the Fulfilling of the Prophecies. We're going to continue on tonight with our banking series that we've been having. We may be possibly closing it out this week. We've been going over the references from Wikipedia, and as we've been stating, you want to do your fact checking on these things that's being stated. So let's get right to it. Chapter 48, called The End of Time and the Fulfilling of the Prophecies, and as it reads, the last prophet in these days is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem man from their sinful ways, and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days, to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed, which is to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner of Jesus, who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who is to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of man, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree, and return to their own and be one with their Father God Allah. The Moorish Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc., that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of man, under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We as a clean and pure nation descended from the inhabitants of Africa do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation. While we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. The covenant of the great God Allah. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earthland, which the Lord thy God Allah had given thee. Come, all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth about your nationalities and birthright, your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We're trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourself with the family of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets. All right, all right. So, as I stated, we're going to jump right into our banking series this week and continue from where we left off last week. Put some good information in the chat that you guys can check out in the meantime, in between time. All right, so we're going to continue where we left off last week. We made our way to the 20th century. And we started touching on the first portion of the 20th century, which started out with the Great Depression. So the next portion that we're going to touch on is World Bank and the development of payment technology. So we're going to get into how payment systems came about over the years as we move through the 20th century here. And this is important to get into, because last week we touched on something called gyro banking, and I want to touch on that and give its proper acknowledgement, because that was one of the main ways that payments were made in the past, especially through credits and using it in what they call gyro banking, using it in that way. So we're gonna get into this next portion here. We're gonna get into this next portion here and go into the World Bank, and how the development of payment systems came about. So as it states, during the post-Second World War period, and with the introduction of the Bretton Woods system in 1944, two organizations were created: the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, who many of you all should be familiar with, and the World Bank. Encouraged by these institutions, commercial banks started to lend to sovereign states in the Third World. This was at the same time as inflation started to rise in the West. The gold standard was eventually abandoned in 1971, and a number of banks were caught out and became bankrupt due to third world country debt defaults. This was also a time of increasing use of technology and retail banking. In 1959, banks agreed on a standard for machine-readable characters, which is the MICR, the MICR, and that stands for Magnetic Ink Character Recognition Code, known as a MICR. And this is character recognition technology that is used mainly by the banking industry to streamline the processing and the clearance of checks and other documents, mainly legal documents or financial documents. So MICR encoding, called MICR line, is at the bottom of checks, which you all should be familiar with that, and other vouchers, and typically includes the document indicator, or the type of document that's being indicated, which will give you the bank code, the bank account, the check number, check amount, things like that. And that's usually added to the check as it's presented for payment. And it's also a control, how they control the legal system, the financial system, the payments. So each country has their own specific type of MICR and how they structure their MICR and checks. So you all should know the MICR, which they have these readers that scan and read the information directly into the computer, and it is similar to a barcode for the most part. So continuing, in 1959, banks agreed on a standard for machine readable characters, the MICR, that was patented in the United States for for use with checks, which led to the first automated reader sorter machines. In the 1960s, the first automated teller machines, ATMs, or cash machines were developed, and first machines started to appear by the end of the decade. Banks started to become heavy investors in computer technology to automate much of the manual processing, which began a shift by banks from large clerical staffs to new automated systems. By the 1970s, the first payment systems started to develop that would lead to electronic payment systems for both international and domestic payments. The International SWIFT payment network was established in 1973, and domestic payment systems were developed around the world by banks working together with governments. So the technology came in, and as you can see here, this is where the banks positioned themselves to be the right hand man to the government or the state. So all of the things that took place prior, all of the industrial moves that were made, all the economic moves that was made, the economic contributions that was made, especially by the 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 Europeans, the British, the English, and the things that they put together. And as this country here in America continued on with its development, that technology, that knowledge was pretty much brought over here this way. But I do want to include this point too with it. We do know of the history of America. We know of the history far as how the American government developed and came about, and what they call the Union. But what is missing, a key piece that's missing, there's nothing mentioned of America throughout the ages when it comes to the history of banking. Everything can be traced back all the way to ancient Egypt and ancient Africa, right? So what influences did ancient America have on the monetary system? This is a point that you really don't see anything or much about. What contribution to the history of economics, the history of money, did ancient Americans bring? So these are the things that we should be looking into as a people. And as we have it mentioned in the writings of the prophet and the Holy Quran Circle 7, there was trade and transportation being developed from Africa all the way to Atlantis, to America, North, South, and Central America. People were traveling, people were trading, going to and fro. So there was some type of trade and economic contribution made by those here in America. And this is one of the things that we have to look into as a people and bring this knowledge to the forefront. What were the financial systems? What was the denomination of currencies that were here in America, especially by the tribes of people that were here in America? Right? Which tribe had which currency? And which type of economic system did they have? Now, for the most part, we may have some basis points on the type of economics for ancient Americans. Now, that may be easier to come across and touch on. But getting deeper into what type of monetary policies, monetary systems did we have as ancient Americans, right? So this is what we want to keep in mind. And of course, I'm gonna be putting together some content as we continue on here into the future and uploading that to YouTube so people could check it out, fact check, data check the knowledge. But we're gonna have to get into that. We're gonna have to really look into that. What has been the ancient American contribution to the financial history of things, to the banking history, to the economics history? And we know that it's tied into the ancient dominion. We know that. We know that much, right? So this next section is called deregulation and globalization. And it states, global banking and capital market services proliferated during the 1980s after deregulation of financial markets in a number of countries. The 1986 Big Bang in London, allowing banks to access capital markets in new ways, which led to significant changes to the way banks operated and accessed capital. It also started a trend where retail banks started to acquire investment banks and stockbrokers, creating universal banks that offered a wide range of banking services. The trend also spread to the US after much of the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed in 1999 during the Clinton administration. This saw US retail banks embark on big rounds of mergers and acquisitions and also engage in investment banking activities. Financial services continued to grow through the 1980s and 1990s as a result of a great increase in demand from companies, governments, and financial institutions, but also because financial market conditions were buoyant and, on the whole, bullish. Interest rates in the United States declined from about 15% for 2-year Treasury notes to about 5% during the 20-year period, and financial assets grew then at a rate approximately twice the rate of the world economy. So just to touch on some of the things we just referenced here, we getting into some financial terms that our people should definitely in this day and time be making themselves familiar with. Understanding bullish, what it means to be bullish. The opposite of bullish is bearish. You have a bullish market, which means the prices in the market are going up. They're going up. And bearish, the opposite, means the prices in the market are going down, or in a particular financial instrument, like a bond, like a stock, or a share of a company. And when it mentioned the interest rate for the U.S. Treasury notes, you have the different type of Treasury notes and Treasury bonds that you can invest in, and based on the percentage of the interest rate, you get a return based on that interest rate. So these are some of the basic things that we should be, into, and actually during our current event segment should be having conversation on the regular, updates about what's happening in the financial markets too, as well, because that's also a part of current events and that affects us as a people, and we should be investing together as a community, as a temple. As we read over these past couple weeks about about banking and about economics and finances and currency, a lot of these things were centered around the temple. The temple was the centerpiece to the society, to the communities. And it's somewhat still the same way today, but not as much. And as we continue to modernize and be more advanced in technology, we kind of pull away from that community gathering, that communionship, and that unity around our principles, our ethics and morals, and keep that foundation. So continuing, it states financial services continue to grow. It states this period saw a significant internationalization of financial markets. The increase of U.S. foreign investments from Japan not only provided the funds to corporations in the U.S., but also helped finance the federal government. So foreign investments that were done by the U.S. government helped them to grow. So the market started to become more of an international presence. We start to gain more of an international presence. And this allowed the U.S. government to invest in Japan and other foreign markets, which helped them finance government activities. Continuing, it says the dominance of U.S. financial markets was disappearing, and there was an increasing interest in foreign stocks. The extraordinary growth of foreign financial markets results from both large increases in the pool of savings in foreign countries, such as Japan, and especially the deregulation of foreign financial markets, which enabled them to expand their activities. Thus, American corporations and banks started seeking investment opportunities abroad, prompting the development in the U.S. of mutual funds specializing in trading in foreign stock markets. So they would put together a mutual fund, which is a fund like your typical fundraiser. If you can picture that in your mind, like a GoFundMe, but this is for investments. This is not to, fix your broken leg or, whatever the personal issue may be. This is to make an investment, and specifically, they were making investments into company shares from other countries. So these funds were being pulled together to go invest in shares of companies in countries. Continuing, it says such growing internationalization and opportunity in financial services changed the competitive landscape, as now many banks would demonstrate a preference for the universal banking model prevalent in Europe. Universal banks are free to engage in all forms of financial activities and all forms of financial services, make investments in client companies, and function as much as possible as a one-stop supplier of both retail and wholesale financial services. So you had many of the universal banks came along. Our brother Chief Blackwolf is actually a certified universal banker. He has his certification from the American Banking Association, and I have my diploma in Islamic banking, which we know we need economics in our communities, in our temples, amongst ourselves as a people. So there was a lot of knowledge that has been obtained, and now we'll be putting that to use. But first, you got to find whatever niche it is that you're going to use as that vehicle, whether it's flipping houses, selling houses. Some people get into real estate. Some people get into financial services. They become agents, insurance agents, whatever it may be. Some even get into trade and the Forex markets. So we actually made it through the 20th century. So next we're going to jump into the 21st century. And we can close it out as we go over some of the knowledge and wisdom coming from Dr. Claude Anderson and his book that he published called Powernomics, and touch on some things there. And we just may have a little time to squeeze in the history, a quick summary of the history of credit unions, because they are also important to this monetary series, banking series that we're having. And just understanding the basics of these things goes a long way. Like I said, over the past 2 weeks, getting caught up in these theories is not really worth it. If you learn the structure of what these systems are used for, how they're used, and they're used in a regular way, it'll take you a long way. And one of the main things we didn't really go too much into detail about, but what needs to be understood, especially when it comes to accounting and possession and ownership and who owns what, which is one of the main things that comes up in these crazy theories of how our people look at things, is understanding the credits, who the credits belong to. What happens when you take your money to a bank and you put that money in the bank? Now that money in the bank has turned to credits that has been given to you by the banking system that's used by that society or that community. And understanding that you're making a small conversion from physical money that you own tax free, because you can't tax cash, right? You're converting that into digital or book ledger credits. And understanding that the financial board or monetary board or currency board that hosts those credits, that ledger book, that accounting book, they are the possessors and actual owners of those credits. And another major important thing that you have to simply understand is the double entry accounting. Double entry accounting, which confuses a lot of people. It confuses a lot of people. So once you grasp a hold of how double entry accounting works, when you send out a credit, you got to be debit on the other side. And the double entry gets a little more complicated because you may have a debit, but you gain a credit on the asset side of the books. And misunderstanding the double entry system could hurt you. But once you get just the fundamentals of the double entry credit system, book credit, you can go a long way. You can go a long way. It's going to take you places. It's going to help you out, especially just understanding the basics. You don't have to become no accountant or anything like that, but understanding the basics, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur and run business, you at least need to know the fundamentals. And this is what you should be focused on more so than the pipe dream that gets sold to our people. Now, are there other ways of making payments for things? Yeah, there definitely is. But just like any other financial instrument, there must be negotiations involved with that instrument, and you must build a relationship with that person, especially in today's world where we have thousands and thousands upon cryptocurrencies. And the example of that has been set of how you can create these currencies, and now they can start to be used for payments and accepted as payments for goods, products, and services. And this is why taking this information in a fundamental way and understanding that when you learn how to be an entrepreneur, how to communicate properly, and build a relationship, build rapport with business people that are also entrepreneurs, that are into banking, into finance, and you surround yourself with those type of networks and people that are investing on a daily, and you start to build those networks, you build those relationships, you start to open doors for yourself. And these are some of the trade secrets that you can start to utilize, because now you're a part of these networks to where y'all sharing these benefits and you sharing these privileges together. You kind of get the inside scoop. So we're gonna kick it off this 21st century. It states the early 2000s were marked by consolidation of existing banks and entrance into the market of other financial intermediaries, which, for example, you had non-bank financial institutions, kind of similar to some of the institutions we set up, which would be considered non-bank financial institutions in America. But in our system, it would be our bank, or in our jurisdiction, it would be our bank. Continuing, it states large corporate players were beginning to find their way into the financial service community, offering competition to established banks. The main services offered included insurance, pension, mutual, money market, and hedge funds, loans and credits and securities. Indeed, by the end of 2001, the market capitalization of the world's 15 largest financial service providers included 4 non-banks. The first decade of the 21st century saw the culmination of the technical innovation in banking over the previous 30 years, and saw a major shift away from traditional banking to internet banking. Started in 2015, developments such as open banking made it easier for third parties to access bank transaction data and introduce standard API and security models. The process of financial innovation also advanced enormously in the first few decades of the 21st century, increasing the importance and profitability of non-bank finance, such as profitability priorly restricted to the non-banking industry, has prompted the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, the OCC, to encourage banks to employ other financial instruments, diversifying banks' business as well as improving banking economic health. Hence, as the distinct financial instruments are being explored and adopted by both the banking and non-banking industries, the distinction between different financial institutions is gradually vanishing. For example, in 2020, The OCC muddled the distinction between traditional banking and the cryptocurrency ecosystem when it published a number of interpretative letters clarifying national banks' ability to custody cryptocurrency and providing banking services to cryptocurrency companies, as well as use blockchain innovations like stablecoins as settlement infrastructure. In addition, in 2021, the OCC granted its first federal banking charter to Anchorage Digital, a digital asset platform for institutions. So, as I stated, here you go. So, presenting ourselves in a manner that's professional and coming together and doing something that's professional, whether you raise funds through private security or some type of fund, right? And you take those funds and you invest them. Whether you get into private equity, which is something, as I stated, we need to talk about during our current events segment, and really buckle down and get into these matters. So this next section is 2007 to 2008 financial crisis. So we're gonna get into a repeat of what happened in 1933, and it really didn't go too much into detail about the changing from the gold standard to the credit system that came out of Bretton Woods. It really didn't give us much dialogue, but that is also a great portion and part of history of the 20th century, which you will see a repeat of that during the 2007 and 2008, because there was a lot of things that shifted during this time. And this is when Bitcoin made its first introduction around 2007. So out of this crisis, we had a new structure show its head. Same way that the credit system showed its head again in 1933, and we went into a float system where we had the floating dollar that floated over the process of a few days, based on the trade between international companies and international market participants. So it states the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 caused significant stress on banks around the world. The failure of a large number of banks resulted in government bailouts. The collapse and fire sale of Bear Stearns to JP Morgan Chase in March 2008 and the collapse of Lehman Brothers in September that same year led to a credit crunch and global banking crisis. In response, governments around the world bailed out, nationalized, or arranged fire sales for a large number of major banks. So there were other banks buying out other banks that were being sold to other banks. And same thing happened during the crisis in the 30s. The same thing happened. You had a lot of people lose their money in the stock market, in the markets, things like that. A lot of crazy things happened. We also had a .com bubble that burst too as well in the year between the early 2000s and year 1999 to 2001, if I'm not mistaken. We also had that as well. So that's one of the things we want to keep in mind. So starting with the Irish government on the 29th of September 2008, Governments around the world provided wholesale guarantees to underwriting banks to avoid panic of systematic failure to the whole banking system. These events spawned the term too big to fail and resulted in a lot of discussion about the moral hazards of these actions, which is why I say we need to be participating and having that conversation. We need to get in the discussion because that panic still kind of there, still hangs over the head of people everywhere. And as we've seen over this past 4 years with our current presidential administration, things are kind of in the muck and the mire state. We just kind of muddy, we kind of in muddy waters here. we navigating through muddy waters. So we got to get in that economic conversation. We got to make contributions to this economic conversation. I seen just recently over the past week, Brother Ben Carson, he's making some moves. Brother Isaac Hayes, brothers like that are making moves. They're raising capital. They got finance rounds, and they're raising capital for their companies, and they pivot and found out what it is that they want to contribute to society and the market, and established a professional company. And now you can buy shares of Ben Carson's company, which will be establishing a TV network system that allows people to talk about those things that are considered forbidden knowledge. So these are the things that we as a divine and national movement need to be taking heed to, and looking at the examples of, and setting and stepping up, coming together, setting the example. Like I said last week, it don't need to be all the people in the temple and the tabernacle just depending on one rich cookie to get things done for you. Things not gonna work that way. So we got to come together and have that conversation. So before we jump into the powernomics, I want to go over some of the major events that happened throughout the history of banking. We're gonna go through a good list of them, and we can close on this Wikipedia reference. Yeah. So in the 1100s, the Knights Templar, they ran the earliest European-wide Mid-East banking until the 14th century. So this is why I mentioned over the past couple of weeks that Knights Templar, they have their contribution to banking and some of the earliest known contributions to banking. So in 1397, the Medici Bank of Florence is established in Italy and operates until 1494. And we went over who the Medici family is and some of their history. In 1542, the Great Debasement, the English Crown's policy of coin debasement during the reigns of Henry VIII and Edward VI. So you had a debasement of currency that happened in the 1500s. And we ended up having a currency debasement policy that followed after that by King Henry. So what that means is the currencies, the value of these currencies the value was the base. The value was lower. They made the value of the coins lower, and they did that by taking some of the pure metal out of the coin. So, continuing in 1553, the first joint stock company, the Company of Merchant Adventures to New Lands, was chartered in London. And you want to double fact check that, especially this is one of the main things you want to double fact check right here, as indigenous peoples. Because how do we know as indigenous peoples there wasn't a joint stock company that was established long ago? If we're reading over these past couple of weeks, they have family offices going all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia. They have family offices, family trusts going all the way back to Mesopotamia. So you want to double fact check these things if it's actually the first, as it says it is. In 1602, the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was established by the Dutch East Indian Company for dealings in its printed stocks and bonds. Now, this is definitely an important date in the company that's involved, the East Indian Company. If you don't know the history of the East Indian Company, you should definitely look into it. Their involvements with the indigenous people, their treatment toward the indigenous people. And the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, a lot of people got rich. And also, there was a lot of devastating events that happened with the indigenous people with these early stock exchanges, because this is where the slave trade was happening. It was happening on these stock exchanges. So in 1609, the Amsterdamsche Wisselbank, the Amsterdam Exchange Bank, was founded. In 1656, the first European bank to use banknotes opened in Sweden for private clients. In 1668, the institution converted to a public bank. And this is 2 years, we're talking 2 years, not 2 years, 10 years before what happened in 1666, the Enlightenment and all these things that came about. So in 1690, during the 1690s, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was the first of the 13 colonies to issue permanently circulating banknotes. So there goes some things that happened in America, but that goes back to the 1690s. To the 1690s, was there banknotes being printed in America by indigenous peoples? Especially with all the things that we're finding out and coming to know, that there was people here already, that there was governmental structures here already. Could there possibly be documented currency systems and things like that as well? Even the maps, we know about the maps. A lot of the maps were destroyed. A lot of the maps that we had as indigenous Americans, they were made on dirt. So once the map was made, it would disappear. So it was left up to the knowledge of the chief or the adepts in the tribe. In 1694, the Bank of England was founded to supply money to the English king. In 1695, the Parliament of Scotland created the Bank of Scotland. In 1716, John Law opened Banque Generale in France. In 1717, Master of the Royal Mint, Sir Isaac Newton, established a new mint ratio between silver and gold that had the effect of driving silver out of circulation and putting Britain on a gold standard. So that's something that definitely needs to be looked into some more. In 1720, the South Sea Bubble and John's Law Mississippi Scheme failure caused a European financial crisis and forced many bankers out of business. So they had a banking crisis during the 1720s. So that's another thing you want to look at, because this will help you understand the mistakes not to be repeated, the failures that are not to be repeated. Because a lot of the things that we end up dealing with in today's banking system and modern day banking be things that already happened in the 1800s, things that already happened in the 16 and 1500s. These things then, they already didn't happen. So in 1775, the first building society, Keatley's Building Society, was established in Birmingham, England. 1782, the Bank of North America opened. In 1791, the first Bank of the United States was chartered by the United States Congress for 20 years. In the 1800s, the Rothschild family establishes European-wide banking. So by this time in the 1800s, that Rothschild network was thick. It was spider webbing. In 1811, the Senate tied on a vote to renew the charter for the first Bank of the United States charter. Vice President George Clinton broke the tie and voted against renewal, and the bank was dissolved. And I'm not sure if you have seen the first Bank of the United States, but I've actually been there to both of the banks, the first and the second, and took pictures there. It's definitely a historical site. So in 1816, the second Bank of the United States was chartered for 20 years. Difficulties financing the government during and after the War of 1812 overcame the resistance to central banking that led to the expiration of the first Bank of the United States charter 5 years earlier. So they was beefing with the central bank. Of course, they was going by another name at the time, but they was going back and forth. They was having a spat with the central bank. In 1817, the New York Stock Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange board was established. So they put together the board for the New York Stock Exchange in 1817. And I remind you, slavery was still going on. This is still during the slave era. 1818, the first saving bank of Paris was established. 1825, panic of 1825, in which 70 UK banks failed. So they was having some major banking issues in the 1820s. Need to look into that. See what was the causes and the reasons for it. 1862, to finance the American Civil War, the federal government under U.S. President Abraham Lincoln issued legal tender paper money called greenbacks. And this has a lot of controversy behind it, with the greenbacks being used to help with the debt that was coming from these wars, right, to finance the wars, as well as who America was in debt to, the different countries, the obligations. So 1874, the Species Payment Resumption Act was passed, provided for the redemption of United States paper currency and gold beginning in 1879. So this is kind of leading up to the gold standard, kind of the early foundations for the gold standard. In 1913, the Federal Reserve Act created the Federal Reserve System, the central banking system of the United States, and granted it the legal authority to issue legal tender. So this is the strong arming when the central bankers, they pretty much won the beef that was going on between the non-central bankers, and they gained enough power to build that relationship and establish the Federal Reserve Act and system through the U.S. government. And this gave them legal authority to start issuing legal tender. So this is tender that can be accepted anywhere in the United States for debts, public and private. So in 1930 through 1933, in the wake of the Wall Street crash of 1929, 9,000 banks closed, wiping out 1/3 of the money supply in the United States. 9,000 banks went into debt. And that was due to bank runs and things like that that happened. People wanted to get their money out of the banks. And there was a bunch of other things that was taking place. I think this is during the World War I and II era, which caused a lot of these issues. Then 1933, Executive Order 6102, signed by U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, forbade ownership of gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates by U.S. citizens beyond a certain amount, effectively ending the convertibility of U.S. dollars into gold. So this put some pushback on being able to redeem the paper dollar and gold, because now you can only own a certain amount of gold by law, which is really, if you think about it, somewhat unconstitutional and is against capitalism. So that's something that should be dived into. What type of political thinking is that? What type of political thinking is that? And this is the main thing that gets mentioned in a lot of these schemes and theories that come up. But as I mentioned last week, when you're talking about public debt, that's dealing with the public, the people. So that means the government bodies is who take care of these debts. Now, you may be able to influence some things on the private sector side of things, but you still have to work your way through building up a viable business, a viable legal entity, corporation, and company that's either in the banking sector or some portion of the financial sector to really make effect on helping reduce the public debt. But understanding how finances work, there's always going to be debt, especially when there's always going to be entrepreneurs, trade, people creating companies, creating enterprise and economics within a country. And that topic needs to be dived in way more, but just in simplicity, understanding that main point will help you sift past a lot of the BS that comes your way. So in 1971, the Nixon shock was a series of economic measures taken by U.S. President Richard Nixon, which canceled the direct convertibility of the United States dollar to gold by foreign nations. This essentially ended the existing Bretton Woods system of international financial exchange. So you had the Bretton Woods system come to a halt in the 70s. Then in 1986, the Big Bang, which is the deregulation of London's financial markets, served as a catalyst to reaffirm London's position as a global center of world banking. In 2007, the start of the late 2000s financial crisis that saw the credit crunch that lead to the failure and bailout of a large number of the world's biggest banks. So there was a credit crunch during the year 2007, and Satoshi Nakamoto and his community that he had, his community of developers, they was aware of these things just as well as a lot of more, a lot of more other people from different walks of life, different background. Pretty sure the whole nation was aware of the environment, the financial environment, the status of it. You could feel it. Especially after what happened in the year 2000 and the crunch that came not even a decade later in 2007 and 2008. And then in 2008, you had Washington Mutual collapse, the largest bank failure in history up to this point in time. And just recently, we had a bunch of banks that failed last year in the year 2023. And many other things that happened as well that were newsworthy or really historical in a way. For example, Pope recalling all of the assets, the global assets of the Catholic Church back to the Vatican. That was something major that happened when went unspoken about, really. So we took a deep dive into the history of banking, and this allowed us to touch on the things that have happened over the course of history. But we also see that once the central banking structure was set up between Europe and America, you don't too much hear from the other participants, as far as even on the whole entire global level. According to this reference point that we're reading, you don't see much global historical contributions from other countries and things like that, because majority of the world's banking system was facilitated through the World Bank and the IMF. And so things that happen in China, things that happen in Japan, things that happen in Africa, the African Development Bank, a lot of those things were facilitated through the United Nations and the IMF, but they also had records that were newsworthy in these other countries, like their economic growth over short periods of time. Because a lot of countries went from being more rural in their structure to super metropolitans over decades. And these are things that should also be acknowledged too as well. But these fundamental things, when it comes to finances, asset protection, the things that you could do, you want to double fact check them, and you do that by learning simple, basic principles in financing, like double entry accounting, book entries, understanding that when you debit something, you have to credit something. You debit one side, you credit the other. You credit one side, another side is being debited. And there's other principles that get stacked on top of that. But like I'm saying, you still want to get into the simple basics of it. And those fundamentals will take you a long way. And managing your finances, understanding just the simplicity of what doing administration is, as I've mentioned last week. Somebody send you an email, you send them an email back, or they send you a legal notice, you send them a legal response or a legal notice back. Now, the things that are not talked about, such as the lack of legal assistance, because a lot of the time you get told to go get a lawyer to handle the situation. But each individual should be aware of the laws in their country, their community, their city hall. So at least the basics is understood when it comes to the rules and regulations of a community. At least the basics. That don't mean you have to understand the art of the legal system, nor its language or its rhetoric, because basic administration is to help you out with basic things in life. Like I said, somebody send you an email, you send one back. You're administrating your own affairs. Just that simple. But when you're dealing with complexities of proving someone innocent in a murder case, that's a whole different realm of things. And you start to get into deep technicalities. That's the reason for experts in legal matters. But issues such as us needing legal assistance and the lack of finance toward there being people to assist you in that matter, that's a political issue, that's a social issue that we should be coming together to talk about as a people. And the people that get caught up, in these movements and these theories, it'll be better to afford your attention that way so we can get these things done. And those that ended up going down the route of learning these legal terms and things like that, you all should be counselors and consultants, really, and arbitrators, private counsels, or consultants. Or go become an actual lawyer. As I've been saying many times, especially us here in the temple, we need Moorish lawyers. We need more people in the temple to become Moorish lawyers. But be professional, as the prophet has told us to do. To be professional with what it is that we're striving toward. This is something that is key, very key. So we're gonna get into this powernomics before we close out the banking series that we've been diving into. So I've been really sneak peeking, get my little sneak peek on of the book. Been reading it over the past week and coming back to it. And all I can say is it's definitely on point. A lot of the things that Dr. Claude Anderson is mentioning here in text. So I do want to touch on some of the things that are in here. So in Powernomics, Dr. Claude mentions things on racism, monopolies, and inappropriate behavior. And this is what I've been talking and speaking towards: these theories, these rationales, these mindsets, these fanatical based amateur groups that our people get caught into, which leads to inappropriate behavior, radicalism, being radical, not respecting the laws, not respecting the experience, the wisdom. Now, seeing through trickery and things like that, that's a whole another thing. The power of negotiation, even when it comes to negotiation, having the mindset, the wisdom behind negotiation, that's a whole nother thing. So please don't misconstrue what I'm saying about that in particular, because you do need to have the mindset, the confidence to get into negotiations, to get into being able to communicate and see through bullcrap, especially if someone's selling you a bad product or a bad service or even a bad concept. Either or, you still need to be able to navigate through that. So Dr. Claude also talks about empowerment, and he gives the keys to empowerment. What it's going to take to empower us as a people, because that's what Powernomics is about. It's about empowering Moorish people. So he also goes over building competitive communities, because throughout the text he talks a lot about these monopolies that have been established, even on a racial intent, which gets into the wealth gap, the economic divide, and the things that happened during slavery. So Dr. Claude also goes into restructuring schools for group competitiveness, and that's more of something on the political side, but it's going to take wealth. It's going to take us coming together, creating financial infrastructure as a people to make these kind of effects and changes in the political environment. And he talks about how politics is really something that comes after the money grab, after you come together and create the financial infrastructure. So of course he touches on practicing group economics, which is how we make these things happen. He goes into industrialization, same way the prophet, but he's going into debt from his experience and studies as a professor. We're talking about a man that has taught in colleges, has been on very prominent people, political campaign, and has led political campaigns of very prominent people. So he has some wisdom or some insight when it comes to these things. So he talks about industrialization and using new paradigms, which is new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. He talks about practicing group politics, us coming together to 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 affect change on the political level and political matters, such as the restructuring of the schools, especially having our own schools, as has been one of the things that we promote here in Branch Temple number 24, the Moorish Science Temple of America. He talks about new and expanded role for churches, the temple. So getting into the role of how we're supposed to operate as a church, as a temple body of people. And he also gives a economic plan, an empowerment plan. He gives a reparation plan. He talks about AIDS and wealth. And he also gives a checklist on how to go about accomplishing these goals. So there's a lot of things that he really gets into in the text. So what I will do is I'll read the introduction to the book. I'll at least do that. And what I'm gonna work on is getting this as an audio book in our YouTube library. That way you all could listen straight from YouTube to the book as an audio book, and we can work on that. So this introduction for Powernomics, it states, despite the fact that integration began 50 years ago, Black Americans remain the primary targets of conservative hate groups, police brutality, and abusive government actions. According to a Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI annual report, Blacks are the victims of approximately 67% of hate crimes, though they are only 12.4% of the nation's total population. With recent incidents such as 170 church burnings, Black men dragged to their death behind pickup trucks in Texas and Illinois, or shot 41 times in New York while reaching for a wallet, it is not difficult to understand how the tally quickly reaches 67%. The FBI hate crime list does not even include soft crimes like denying Black people home mortgages, jobs, or the right to use the highways without being pulled over for driving while Black. Within every category of social-economic deprivation, Blacks represent 6 to 8 times their proportionate number of the general population. The fact that Blacks are overrepresented on this nation's welfare, poverty, unemployment, homeless, drug addiction, and crime rolls is no accident and should come as no surprise. The function of racism is to marginalize Black people. So this is the first paragraph of the Powernomics book. So like I said, he goes into great detail about structuring our own economic system, creating wealth in our Moorish communities, and then building a political structure. So everything Dr. Claude Anderson is really touching on in the Powernomics book, which you all should check out. If you don't have a copy, you should get you a copy. I may put a affiliate link in our chat and our description for this next sermon that we'll be posting later on. We are on sermon number 95. so that way you all can get a copy of it. And like I said, I'll work on adding it as a audiobook to the channel. But as I was saying, the work of Dr. Claude Anderson is definitely in alignment with the work of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And this is something us as Moorish people should keep our minds and eyes and ears open to. Like I said last week, a lot of the things that we get caught up in pushes our people away and keeps us away from knowledge that could be useful, real resourceful information, because we don't want to hear the word black in other terms. And socially, it has become a norm. And social norms are hard to change if you don't provide ways to effectively change those norms. We have the tools, but there's also going to take a work ethic. There's also going to take a entrepreneurial spirit, as Dr. Claude Anderson is alluding to, as the Prophet is alluded to, and many other leaders in our communities that have came and gone, succeeded and failed, have alluded to. And with that, we're going to close out tonight's sermon. We're going to jump into our current events segment. With that, we're going to do a quick room reset. Welcome to Branch Temple number 24, World Temple. We are a global temple of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We are a global branch temple of the Moorish Science Temple of America, where we teach our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may learn to love instead of hate. Come link yourself with the family of nations by joining us here every Friday on Telegram. Come link yourself with the family of nations, where we're teaching our people their divine creed and to learn to love instead of hate. With that, we're gonna get into some news. We have some issues this week with our school. So if anyone has been trying to log in, I'm working on that. Not too sure what is going on. Wasn't able to do the holy instructions last week, so I caught notice of it myself last week. Also, we want to look into the financial updates that's coming from the Federal Reserve on the market, the interest rates, things like that. And one of the major things that has been popping up here and there is the affordability crisis of people in their homes. And this week we had a hot topic on squatters, which a lot of people was talking about heavily yesterday. It's popping up in the news and popping up in different social audio networks, just different spaces all over the place, just talking about it, videos everywhere. So there's definitely an issue going on with the homeless in America and the immigration that is happening, which we know that is also a tool, a political tool that has been used for the detriment of other political factions in this country and or marginalized groups of people. We're still working on our website, so bear with us. And the school, that's going to be our focus coming here soon. As I've mentioned, we're going to work on building up the revenue through our content. That way we can launch the website again and possibly get a better platform to do it on. I think I also have to get the credit guide up for the credit union. The credit union is still up and running. The website is still there. We just pulled back on the administration of it because we're definitely going to need help and building our credibility here in the background. And with that, we're going to jump into our weekly reading of El's Holy Qur'an and pick up where we left off last week. And last week we stopped at chapter 41. Chapter 41 called The Secret. So we're going to pick up where we left off. On ayat 64, the Tasfir states, on that day, those who conceal that which they know to be the facts will be cast into it. Elohim will seal their mouths, and their hands and legs will speak to us. Whomever the Elohim grant a long life, they lower them in the Khalq. Muhammad wasn't taught poetry by the Anunnaki. Muhammad is to warn the living. And ayat 64 starts out saying, cast into it the day that which you were concealing what you knew to be the facts. The day knocked them. We will seal on their mouths, and their hands will speak to us, and their legs will watch which they were to earn. And if we not heed, please to make ourselves lusterless on their eyes. So they run to the narrow path, so surely how will they see? And if we Anunnaki please to make them transform on their places, so what can they do when they are departing, and they will not be able to return? At whom we not he grant a long life, we lower him in the color creation, regress them from deity to Homo erectus. So do not they have any intelligence? And we not he have not taught him Muhammad al-Shira, the poetry, and it's not desirable for him. Muhammad Ahmad is not to recite poetry. Surely it is nothing except a dhikrun, reminder, and a mubin, clear reading, Qur'an. For he has to warn who was living and make the same truthful on the ones who conceal that which they know to be the facts. So this next Tasfir commentary states, Enocytes were created by the Elohim's own hand. They were given dominion over the cattle and creatures of Qui, or earth. Cattle were humbled to them. They took besides the law of the sources, the likeness of the creation, the sources knowing with all creation. He made the fire from the green tree. Yahweh is the creator, knower. If he wants a thing to come into existence, he only has to say to it, exist. His hand is the mulk of all things. You all will return to him. So ayat 71 states, or don't they see that surely we not he, kalakna, created, lahum, for them, mimma, from what, edina, our, not my hands, a millet, worked, cattle. So they Malikim, Malikum are rulers. Laha, for it, we not he, gave them dominions, made them rulers over all creatures of the planet Qui, or earth. And we not he, humbled them, the cattle, for them. So from them they are to ride, and from them they eat. And for them in it all benefits and drinks. So will they not be grateful? And they have taken from besides the source, Allah, Allahat, Allah's sources, perhaps they might be aided. They will not be able to receive their aid, and for them is a Gadun army that will be brought in their presence, that will be brought in their possession, which means the coming of Nibiru. So don't grieve about their saying, surely we know that which they do in secret, and that which they make known. Or Al Insan, the inner sight, does not see. Surely we not he, created him from a nutfa, life germ, sperm. So then he's a clear Kasim, opponent, or clone. And he struck a likeness for us, and he forgot Kalaku, his creation. He said, who gives life to the bones, and they are decayed. So that means took a rib bone and blood to clone. Basically is what it's saying right here. So ayah 79 states, say he gives life to them which he created, meaning brought into existence for the first time, and he is knowing with all creations. Then the clone is meaning the clone. It's talking about the clone that he created. The clones. So continue from ayah 80, it states, it is he who made for you nar, fire, from al-shagri, al-akda, the green tree, so that you can kindle from it. Or was not he not we, who created the samawat, the skies, and the Qui, Tiamat, al-Ard, that he's able to create like them other life in the universe? Yes, indeed. And in fact, he is al-Khalaq, the creator, al-Alim, the knower. Surely what amruhu, his not our command is. When he wants a thing is to say for it to exist, and into existence it comes. So glory be to him, not we, by way of his, not our, hand is the mulk, rulership of all things, and you will return to him, not us. Surika Allahu El Azim. So that is the closing of chapter 41. So next week we'll start out with chapter 42, called Al for the Khan, which means the differentiation, and in the mistranslation of El's Holy Quran, they put it in the wrong order, and that would be chapter 25. So originally it was chapter 42, and they moved it to chapter 25. So we'll start off with chapter 42 next week, and it's kind of long. It's a long chapter here, so it may take us some weeks to get to it, but we're gonna get through it. And officially we'll be kicking off our setting the record straight next week, which will lead us getting into the Holy Tablets and touching on the Holy Tablets and really diving into the text. From there, we'll be getting into some heavy information. And since we don't have the holy instructions with us for tonight, I'll just jump into our closing literature for tonight. So we'll be ending a little early since we don't have the holy instructions. I'm gonna work on getting a copy of that, so at least we'll be able to go over the holy instructions. But I rather you all have the link to the school and get the school link functioning again, because we definitely need that. It's definitely of great importance. We've been working on the school for at least 10 years of background development of that. So we definitely need to to put our prayers up for that. So with that, we're gonna go over the mandatory literature from the prophet, and we're gonna close it on out with our Moorish prayer for tonight. Islam. The prophet warns all Muslims and peacemakers, and this is to be read in every temple meeting and temple service. The prophet said, I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We're for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your card at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Zabuwr Ali, and if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet therefore is sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. True peace, Zabuwr Ali. Islam. So we're going to get into this last mandatory message from the prophet and warning. The prophet left us with some divine warnings that we must take heed to. And everything we touched on tonight is definitely in due season, due timing to look into. And we know what our goals is. We set the goal to be monetized on YouTube last year. We accomplished it at the beginning of this year. And next, as we build up revenue from our content, sharing our content, our goal is to keep spreading it out, keep building our influence by maintaining the things that we have and putting our investments in the forefront, making the right decisions with our investments. And that's going to require bringing people who are diligent and consistent, as one of the instructions, the holy instructions from the prophet, into the forefront. To the forefront. And this is a call to the people that are on our wavelength, that are picking up the wave that we're putting out. Because we need people that are studious, especially in theology and understanding these things. Because there's a lot of things that's going over our people's head in the divine and national movement, especially the lack of unity. One temple, one prophet. So with that, we're gonna go into this message that's to be proclaimed in every temple meeting and temple service. Islam. The prophet said, I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me in the movement will be remembered. This is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world would not recognize the movement without me, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works, which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So that message is clear. It's not your Grand Sheik. It's not your Supreme Grand Sheik. Or whoever your Moorish temple leader is, that's to be the head to make this thing happen. It's the prophet. One temple, one prophet. Put the prophet out front. Keep it simple. You want to join the Moorish Science Temple of America? Show your butt up here on Friday. Lock in, link in with us on Friday. Link in and lock in with the temple on Friday. Join us here on Telegram. Proclaim your nationality. Put it on the record for the record. You have a public recording, a public record of your proclamation. Join us. Show up on Sunday for the newcomers gathering. And we go over what it means to join the temple. We go over the fundamental science of the temple itself and the wisdom and the knowledge that the prophet gave us in the one-on-ones and those keys. And we go through text as well, sacred text, scriptural text as well, that connects the dots for you. But you must be interviewed by the Royal Council that will be developing here, which will be interviewed by me and the Grand Sheik. And like I said, you'll show back up here on next Friday, proclaim your nationality, put it on record, and we take it from there. And I'll introduce you to the divine minister. That way you can get your button, your card, and things like that. And you'll be off to the races. With that, we're going to close out tonight with our Moorish prayer. I hope you all enjoyed your Friday. You've been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, Grand Sheik, Dr. Lawiy. And then see y'all next Friday, and this Sunday. So y'all know how it goes. All rise facing the east, feet at a 45-degree angle, 2 fingers up, 5 fingers up. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. All right, y'all. So I'll see y'all next week or this Sunday. True peace. Islam. Wadu.